Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Ganga Chatatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara Ganga Chatatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Ganga Chatatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara 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 Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva 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 Ganga Chatatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara.
We live in the reality of the Absolute, which surrounds us on all sides. We love names and forms very much, but this is also our curse, because these very same names and forms capture us easily, as if using our love for them and leading us in their own direction. Power over anything belongs to the one who imprints the seal of vision and contemplation. In essence, all souls that do not abide in Brahman are those that have lost Hridayam, the connection with the center. Such souls are eccentrics. Ribhu Gita, the sacred teaching of Shiva, Chapter 12.
I will reveal to you a great secret, a sacred knowledge that is rarely revealed to anyone in this world. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin.
The innermost secret of Advaita Vedanta is expressed in the Mahavakyas, such as Sarvam Evam Brahman. Everything is Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman.
Prajnanam Brahman. Primordial consciousness is Brahman. Ekam eva advidyam Brahman. Brahman is one without the other.
Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is Brahman.
Tatvamasi, you are that.
Where that is Brahman, and you are the individual Atman.
I am Atma Brahma. This supreme true self is Brahman. Soham, I am him.
And to study Advaita means
Meditating on these Mahavakyas all your life, gaining more and more insight. We specialize in the Mahavakya Aham Brahmasmi. The Mahavakya Sarvam Evam Brahman.
this is the Mahavakya that unites the internal and the external.
Aham Brahmasmi is the one that separates from the five sheaths and finds the clear light that can be identified with Brahman.
To explore the paths of Advaita means to make texts like the Ribhu Gita, Ashtavakra Gita, and Avidhuta Gita your daily companions. Atmabodha, Viveka Chudamani, Brahma Chintanam, these are the texts of Shankara. This is the original fundamental basis from which one must begin the practice, building such a foundation. When we turn our gaze toward matter, toward manifestation, toward dynamics, toward the play, the philosophy of Shiva comes in, explaining to us how Brahman creates this world. But in essence, it is one single teaching.
All this is Brahman, exclusively Brahman. Brahman is the only reality. And everything you hear is only Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. The entire universe is only Brahman. The cause and effect of all movements. The living word is only Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. This whole world is exclusively Brahman. Brahman is intelligence and non-intelligence. Beyond the body and within the body is only Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. All the qualities of the world are only Brahman. The Great Self is exclusively Brahman. Brahman the Supreme, the one and only Brahman. Everything is Brahman. And only Brahman.
The teaching of Advaita is the teaching of Shiva. And this teaching radically eliminates Bhranti, the error or Dashadrishti, the flaw of vision. The flaw of vision or cognitive distortion. The fundamental error lies in not seeing Brahman, but seeing what is superimposed upon it. For example, names and forms are superimposed on Brahman. Five sheaths are superimposed on Brahman, and then the illusory perception of a person arises. And we are surrounded by names and forms. Eliminating cognitive distortion means knowing firmly that this is Brahman and constantly tuning in and remembering that this is Brahman. For example, we look at some monk or a brahmachari or a karma sannyasi or a novice, and what do we see? We see a brahmachari, a karma sannyasi, a novice, and we think, brahmachari, karma sannyasi, novice. And he thinks too, brahmachari, or karma sannyasi, or novice. But if you look closer, it is Brahman. And one karma sannyasi, and another, and a third, and one novice, and another, and a third, and one brahmachari, and another, and a third, and one sannyasi, one, another, and a third. And it's only because we haven't looked closely that we settle for certain concepts, labels, that this is a brahmachari, this is a karma sannyasi, this is a novice, that this is a Mataji, this is a Prabhu. We just haven't looked deeply.
And we build for ourselves such a world where differences, gender, affiliation, race, nation, qualities are more important. And we forget the most important thing.
For example, if a guru looks, he looks a little differently. He looks like this. This is Brahman who has come to me. But he has a game like this, a novice, or a karma sannyasi, or a sannyasi, or a brahmachari. So everything starts from here. And when we can see like that, not at the level of a concept, but at the level of deep fundamental vision, we will take a step on the path to enlightenment. And this won't happen arbitrarily, just like that. It's the result of training. It's possible if we train again and again to focus our attention. And when such training reaches mastery, you will be able to recognize Brahman behind all names and forms. Contemplation is nothing other than training the focus of attention. But before focusing attention, one must learn to analytically recognize Brahman behind the five sheaths, behind external names and forms. First analytically, intellectually, this is called Kriya Jnana. Then through the training of contemplation, this is also called Kriya Jnana. And then through direct experience of perception, Pratyaksha, this is called Shuddha Jnana. In essence, to meditate, to contemplate, is nothing other than to recognize Brahman, Shiva, behind all manifestations of names and forms.
This specific thing is only Brahman. That person is Brahman and only that. Everything, whatever it may be, is only Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. The essence beyond space and time is Brahman. Brahman is nothing but boundless happiness. Only Brahman is the supreme knowledge. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman.
We live in the reality of the Absolute, which surrounds us on all sides. But we do not recognize it because of the extreme subtlety of this reality of the Absolute. And an extremely extraordinary, discerning ability is needed to recognize the reality of the Absolute. To meditate and contemplate is to develop in oneself such an extraordinary sensitivity to recognizing the Absolute everywhere and in everything.
And first we train in Dharana and in Dhyana. Then Samadhi comes.
Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi provide such extraordinary sensitivity. For example, when Brahman is recognized in the form of clarity, emptiness, or light. And at first, it happens like a flash. For example, for 2 seconds you experienced immersion in Samadhi or in deep Dhyana, where it was revealed to you that the world is Brahman and non-duality. But then the mind started working, and you came back out. But you need to accumulate the number of such clarities and flashes day after day. Accumulate the number of memories of them, and then get used to holding and reproducing them in consciousness and memory again and again. This is contemplation and self-liberation. And when the number of such flashes is greater than the number of acts of perception, and when the bhava, the power behind them, begins to displace the memory of past lives, this life, and acts of perception, and when clarity based on the vision of Brahman begins to exceed worldly clarity, which is dually based on the non-perception of Brahman, but on cognitive distortion and attachment to samsara, then a shift toward enlightened view and enlightened contemplation will begin. That is, first you need to prepare, then experience such flashes of clarity, and then increase their number until you accumulate a critical mass, until they become dominant against the background of all perceptions. This is a restructuring, a transformation of the psyche, of perception, consciousness, and also energy afterwards. Restructuring of one's perception. Why do we need to restructure this? Because at some point, a great confusion arose. When the creation of the world began, the forces, the gunas, went out of control. We were not mature enough not to be subject to them. And during creation, these forces threw us out of balance as well. We were swept away by this universal storm. And this entanglement has affected us. But there were those souls who were stronger in this storm. These imbalanced gunas did not affect them. They became immortal, eternally enlightened rishis, siddhas, and devas, gods. There were souls affected by this entanglement, but their sattva dominated. They became ordinary gods. As for us, this entanglement affected us so much that sattva mixed with rajas and tamas began to dominate. Therefore, we are closer to the human spectrum of souls. In general, souls come in different spectrums. Sometimes souls are reborn, becoming now gods, then humans. Right now, active reincarnation processes are taking place in the subtle worlds. In the subtle worlds, there are entire stations, entire logistical transit bases, where thousands of souls wait for incarnation and stand in line. Some repent of their sins. Some remember how they lived unrighteously. Some frantically try to remember meditation, remember a mantra. The saints try to pray. Some simply remain in the indestructible sahaja samadhi. Everyone has achieved what they have achieved. Some are absorbed in memories of their family, loved ones, unfinished earthly affairs, and they are preparing to reincarnate, and some are already reincarnating. And when they reincarnate, the memory of the past is hidden in the depths of the body in which they are placed. It will unfold over many lifetimes. And this happens constantly. There are souls of different spectrums, so the places for reincarnation of different souls are localized differently. Souls of the human world spectrum look like people, and they gather in special logistical hubs, so to speak. Like huge airports, train stations, some places where they go through these processes. There are responsible souls who help with such reincarnation, guide the souls, the administration, so to speak. And souls of the animal spectrum, they reincarnate through other hubs. For them, there are other spheres. Souls of the divine spectrum also reincarnate through divine logistical centers, hubs, as they say now. They are greeted with flowers, garlands, music, and offerings. And souls of the hellish spectrum, they also reincarnate differently. It is said that they are met by harsh Yamaduta spirits with nooses and goads, grabbed, dragged along, or they fall down, headfirst. And they are born instantly, without going through the processes of the intermediate state. And in general, different souls of different spectrums are reborn in different ways. We are souls of the human spectrum. This means that we all have a common balance of sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic energies. And the understanding that I am Brahman means starting to move oneself into the class of other souls, into the class of those liberated souls who, even during creation, were not conditioned by energies that went out of balance, on whom they had no influence, and who did not develop cognitive distortions. And the remedy for cognitive distortions, for karmic conditionings, is the view that Ribhu transmits to Nadaga.
Brahman is one, boundlessness, infinity. Brahman and only all states. Brahman and only the phenomenon of multiplicity. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman.
For example, when we see multiplicity, so that this multiplicity does not confuse us, we can remember. Even though there is much of all this, it is all only one Brahman. Suddenly, we will bring everything to a common denominator. When we see various concepts, so that this does not confuse us, we can understand that all this is only one pure consciousness, Brahman. Then concepts will not have power over us. They will help us, not bind us. When desires arise, we can think, but behind these desires, there is only Brahman. And the desires will loosen their grip. We will be able to control them. When a klesha arises, we can think, but the klesha is not separate from Brahman. Simply the play of Brahman's energy. then the klesha will also begin to be purified and melt in this understanding. When we experience smell, touch, perception, sight, hearing, taste, we can also think, behind all these sense organs lies Brahman. Then the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and tongue will not throw us off balance, will not seize us. They will give us the movement of energy, but our consciousness will not fall under their influence. Or when we begin to recognize, behind the actions of the hands, feet, tongue, genitals, the 5 karmendriyas, lies Brahman, this is his manifestation, energy. Then the actions of the hands, feet, tongue, and genitals will no longer condition us. We will not be dependent on them. This is called applying the seal of Brahmajnana. To imprint with the seal of the reality of Brahmajnana every act of perception, every act of action, everything that enters the field of the senses. This means removing oneself from the influence of that which exerts a karmic influence on us. And a sadhu must be able to apply such a seal of Brahman always and everywhere, applying the seal of the view. And when we try to maintain this for a long time, it is called applying the seal of contemplation. Many situations affect us because we have not applied the seal to them, the seal of the view and the seal of contemplation. Many thoughts confuse us because we have not applied the seal of the view to them and
Have not secured it with the seal of contemplation.
many acts of perception tempt us, seduce us, confuse us, paralyze us, drain us, and tire us because we have not applied the seal of the view and contemplation to them. Applying such a seal means that we begin to return to our true nature. We are freed from their influence on us, and they do not throw us out of balance. Essentially, all souls that do not abide in Brahman are those that have lost the hridayam, the connection with the center. They are eccentrics. Those who have lost their center. All souls of samsara have lost their center. Hell beings have lost their center simply because of bad karma, yugra karma, accumulated earlier. Animals have lost their center due to the tendency of dullness and following their desires. Pretas have lost their center due to being clouded by greed, insatiable desires, and impure vision. Humans have lost their center due to attachment and pride and fixation on the material. Asuras have lost their center due to false ideas about power, strength, militancy, authority, dominance, and overestimating their volitional abilities. The gods of samsara have lost their center due to the tendency to enjoy more than to meditate on God. Even the gods of the higher worlds, who have a connection with the divine source, do not fully realize the divine center due to the tendency to fix the mind in dhyana-like states. Gods of celestial forms who are not enlightened but possess the bodies of gods. The gods of the world without forms do not fully recognize this center due to a tendency, an attachment to God, to empty, formless states. And only the truly holy, whether among humans, rishis, siddhas, or devas, who have fully realized non-duality and are unattached to any of the 3 states, Jagrat, Svapna, Sushupti, nor to the material, the subtle, or the causal, fully recognize the divine principle, and therefore they are free. That is why they are immortal cosmic players. And to realize such a degree of freedom, Svatantriya, means to attain the immortal body of wisdom, Jnanadeha.
All smells are Brahmin and only Brahmin. But he is beyond smells, he is always beyond everything. Brahmin is the possibility for smells to exist. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin. Touch is only Brahmin. Brahmin and only Brahmin is all sounds. Brahmin and only Brahmin is all forms. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin. The world is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman and only Brahman is the foundation of everything. The heart of everything is exclusively Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. The word, that, is always only Brahman. The word, you, is exclusively Brahman. The word, is, truly Brahman. Everything abides in unity with Brahman. Brahman and only Brahman is all that is secret. Brahman and only Brahman is all that is manifest. Brahman and only Brahman is all that is unchanging. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman is entirely the source of everything. Brahman is the beginning, Brahman is the end. Brahman is the beginning and end of all that exists. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman is presence, Brahman is absence. There can be no doubt that I am Brahman. Whatever it may be, everything is only Brahman. Everything is Brahman and only Brahman.
Here it is not a matter of logic, but of continuously remembering Brahman. As soon as your attention is directed toward Brahman, the wisdom associated with Brahman, the grace and clarity associated with Brahman are activated. Of course, the point is not to repeat, everything is Brahman and only Brahman, or to think it, or to whisper it. This is not a mantra, and not even an analytical meditation.
But in the beginning, analytical meditations on the theme of the Ribhu Gita are very useful. For example, when you meditate, everything is Brahman.
What does this actually mean? We need to figure it out. You take this thought and focus on it well. You read the shloka and meditate.
You gain some experience of insight. You read Ribhu's statement again, meditate, reflect, and not just meditate, but go deep in thought. And through such reflection, you try to concentrate so as to gain some insight or revelation.
And so, shloka by shloka, you can meditate on the Ribhu Gita and extract grace, a certain insight from each shloka. Finally, in the true sense, to understand all is Brahman. This means not even meditating or reflecting that all is Brahman, but flawlessly abiding beyond thought and mind in a non-conceptual understanding that all is Brahman. This is possible when you rise above thoughts, opening up a subtle, clear, very intense consciousness. And with the help of this consciousness, you rise above the body. You rise above the energy body, above the subtle body, the mental body, and the causal body. Because you shouldn't project the statement onto the gross shells. If you do that, you'll secularize the idea of Brahman, reify it, and it will be a form of eternalism.
What Ribhu is talking about refers to the subtlest pure consciousness beyond the 5 sheaths. And first, one must realize Brahman beyond the 5 sheaths. Otherwise, eternalistic projections of the idea of Brahman onto the body, the energy body, the subtle body and subtle world, the mental or causal body, are inevitable. And then you'll be fundamentally mistaken in your understanding of God and your goal on the path of moksha. But to recognize Brahman as pure non-dual consciousness beyond the 5 sheaths is the way to never be mistaken.
When the dimension of Turiya, the 4th state, beyond waking, dreaming sleep, and dreamless sleep is recognized, and you gain a certain confidence in meditating on Turiya, in contemplation in Turiya in everyday life, then you can begin the reverse process. If the first process was the neti-neti method,
then the reverse process follows the iti-iti method.
And you learn to bring down the transcendental state of Turiya, the consciousness of Brahman, into the causal body, the mental body, the astral body, into the energy body and the physical body, and accordingly, into all these worlds.
But not the other way around. First, neti-neti rule, then iti-iti.
How one could distinguish Turiya from Sushupti? Or will you just know when you're there? I mean, is there some kind of sign? Well, as Guruji said, Brahman cannot be
Projected.
projected. projected onto the causal body. So that's already it seems like a very difficult task.
Yes, the most difficult type of discernment is between Turiya and the causal body. But here's a hint. In the causal body, there is a subtle duality. In the causal body, you exist either as infinite space. You are infinite, but you are still there. But in Turiya, that's not the case. In Turiya, there's no separation between you and Brahman. In Turiya, there is only one. Or, in the causal body, you exist as infinite consciousness. You are infinite consciousness, but you still exist.
And so a process like this begins. In the seventh dhyana, when you start to experience the feeling of I am not, the feeling of the non-existence of the self, this is the start of the transition to the Turiya dimension, but perception still remains.
Even so, subtle traces of duality are still present.
And finally, when you move to the eighth dhyana, the meditative states corresponding to this, it's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi or a Samprajnata Samadhi in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras.
There is neither you as the experiencer nor the perception that you as the experiencer are absent, but there is boundless pure consciousness. That is, it's not a negative state, it's a positive state, but without a subject, without a perceiver in terms of the sense organs. It is being in itself, which is aware of itself, without allowing for the slightest duality. And this being possesses luminosity. This is called prakash, and it possesses a tendency for reflection, for manifestation. This is called vimarsha.
And so, when you come into contact with such a being where there is no other, and it's so natural and clear, there's nothing even to discuss, where you realize, so there is only one being. It's not like you're saying, I am this Brahman.
The I that wanted to be Brahman here is already gone. It is silent. You can use I only functionally, only as a game, only for others. But you no longer have any idea of I in relation to yourself. You cannot call yourself yourself because you know that you are only Brahman.
And when you experience this non-dual consciousness, you have no doubt that there are no other options. This is a single being, and this single being is my nature, what I used to call myself.
And it is realized in dreamless sleep as pure consciousness and light.
Then it is already Turiya. It is not causal body.
Brahman alone is the state of reality. I am the boundless Brahman and only that. Brahman is true existence. The state beyond states is only Brahman. Brahman is the essence of everything, only Brahman. The Guru is Brahman. Treat him as such. Try to see only Brahman in everything. Liberation is only Brahman. Everything before, everything after is only Brahman, perfect and primordial. Here and now, there is only Brahman. All of this is Brahman, and only Brahman. Being, consciousness, bliss is Brahman. Perfect and primordial. Here and now, there is only Brahman. All of this is Brahman, and only Brahman.
So, the frequency of perceiving Brahman increases when we meditate like this. The probability of realizing Brahman, of receiving the revelation that all this is Brahman, increases. The synchronicity of perceiving Brahman grows. The sadhu's luck grows, the sadhu's fortune grows, the number of beneficial meditative experiences grows. The number of small, fleeting samadhis increases. The number of nirvikalpa samadhis focused on Brahman, of lucky, successful meditations, grows. What is a successful meditation? A successful meditation is savikalpa samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi. All other meditations can be categorized as unsuccessful.
But if you maintain a good view, you increase the probability of a successful meditation. Maybe it won't be samadhi, but maybe it will be dhyana. You no longer treat meditation as some boring thing you have to do out of obligation. Instead, your attitude toward meditation is more like someone at a diving championship. Such person is extremely focused, and he's thinking about how to execute this dive perfectly to win the gold medal.
Every time is a challenge, as if you're jumping from a 10-meter platform and you sit down with anticipation. Because you're tuned into Brahman, you're not tuned into fighting thoughts, spinning reflexive thoughts in your mind, or thinking about seva or other people. You're not tuned into fighting pain in your knees or back. All that is very quickly left behind because your basic orientation is toward Brahman. And the probability of good meditations, very high quality, revelatory meditations, insightful, divinely revealed, blessed meditations, your probability increases. You get an 80% chance of gaining insight, realization, the divine grace of revelation in every Mahashanti, in every retreat meditation. If you prepare yourself this way by maintaining the view that all is Brahman.
The number of successful mantra recitations with grace and revelations, the number of successful contemplative sankalpas performed during Chinkramanam increases.
Your practice ceases to be a monotonous routine of a method. It becomes blessed, radiant with divine grace. Because you've tapped into this understanding and you begin to draw divine insight, mercy, and grace from this source.
That is how it comes.
Existence, consciousness, bliss is only Brahman. Brahman alone, exclusively Brahman. Brahman is bliss, Brahman is everywhere. Brahman is love, manifesting all things. If the soul manifests what is good, it means that Shiva himself shines within it. If the soul manifests what is corrupt, it means it is in its own personal hell. Brahman alone is all the sense organs. Only Brahman is manifested as objects. Only Brahman alone is all the world's actions. All is but Brahman, and only Brahman.
If the soul manifests negative states, kleshas, anger, delusion, greed, envy, avarice, what are called kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, it means its karmic configuration keeps it from recognizing Brahman.
What is called a personal hell, a personal state of a preta, a personal state of the animal realm, a personal state of the human realm, a personal state of a samsaric deity, a personal state of a deva or an asura.
But through the view that all is Brahman, you gradually cultivate another distinct, transcendental view within yourself that subdues all kleshas. And to cultivate the awareness, I am Brahman, within yourself means to overcome all other negative, weak, karmically limited personal states. Within us, there are many different forces, diverse energies. Some inspire us to follow the path, others tempt us, some bind us, and others lead us into dullness. But we are cultivating a very holy, very pure state within ourselves. It is like cultivating a precious crystal within yourself, a precious diamond that glows more each day, shining brighter and brighter. And then its radiance floods everything. And you must treat the cultivation of this precious diamond with great care. Especially in the beginning, before we are established, it must be protected and carefully tended so it doesn't spoil, fade, crumble, or break. And the vigilance of a sadhu lies in being watchful and attentive to one's sadhana, protecting this diamond.
This includes keeping the vows of your status, observing samaya, and following ethics, daily discipline, nitya sadhana, and overall mindfulness, as well as cutting off unnecessary desires, the monastic principle of not asking for more than needed, and a healthy, normal asceticism, a constant tendency to practice self-giving in seva, and staying beyond thoughts in non-conceptual awareness. It is from all of this that this precious diamond is born.
From these ingredients, this precious diamond is created. And then, over time, it gradually begins to clear out all of those negative states from your mind.
Brahmin alone is any bliss. Brahmin and only Brahmin is all forms of knowledge. All movement of Maya is also only Brahmin. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin. Brahmin alone is all offerings. Brahmin alone is the heart of space. Brahmin alone is the essence of liberation. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin. Everything pure and impure is Brahmin. Brahmin alone is the cause of everything.
When the pure is Brahman, that is understandable to us. The gods are pure and high in vibration, and they are closest to Brahman. The sattvic state is closest to the experience of Brahman, so they are favorable.
Dattatreya said, a yogi must leave the place where sattvic bhava does not arise. And this applies not so much to a geographical place, but to a place in consciousness. To leave those places in consciousness, those thoughts, those chains of thinking that do not evoke sattva, to leave them. But when it comes to the impure, how can it be Brahman? But we must have such a firm view that would not waver even when perceiving both the pure and the impure. We must also apply the seal of Brahman to any things we perceive as impure. There are physically conditioned impure things, such as the gunas, for example, tamas, the dense part of rajas. There are ideologically conditioned impure things, those we consider impure because of upbringing, ideology, patterns, and concepts. That is, objectively impure things are vibrations. They are dense reality. They are the laws of physics. And there are subjectively perceived impure things when we were, taught to perceive something as impure, and we have already formed such a behavioral reaction. And first we must purify our behavioral reactions through the seal, applying the seal of the Brahman view and the contemplation of Brahman. We must tell ourselves, even this thing that I dislike is also Brahman. I may not like it, but it is still Brahman. And then the power of your view and contemplation will rise above what you dislike. For instance, we might dislike certain traits in a person or a particular way of perceiving things, a design style, or a way of thinking. And we must overcome aversion, krina, and hatred for it, jugupsa, by applying the seal of view and contemplation, saying, what I dislike is my karma, but in reality, it is Brahman, and adopt a more neutral, stable, and free position toward it. Then it won't, as they say nowadays, trigger you. To be triggered means to have certain feelings awakened, to be thrown off balance, to be deeply disturbed by something. Then it will be released. It won't stir up your emotions or throw you off balance. The next stage, once you've dealt with your subjective perception, is to start working with the external laws of physics and metaphysics of this world, things that are fundamentally impure. And you realize that these fundamentally impure areas are serious realms. They are truly dense regions of chaos, darkness, even madness, depths of anger, and depths of fear. This is all dense tamas, dense regions of darkness that are beyond your reach and beyond your means, even for those backed by fundamental cosmic forces. But you learn to gradually free yourself even from their influence by stamping them with the seal of view and the seal of contemplation, saying, even these realms are inseparable from Brahman, even they are Brahman. This doesn't mean you should engage with them. You simply make a mental note. These realms are dense energies of Brahman, but you develop a personal policy for relating to such dense energies. Personal policy for dealing with your own anger, with the anger of others. All of this needs to be worked through. A personal policy for dealing with your own lust and with the lust of others, simply avoiding it. It shouldn't exist in the ashram. A personal policy for your own greed. A personal policy for dealing with the greed of others. Personal relationship policy with own attachment. Personal relationship policy with someone else's attachment. Well, if your family is in a monastic sangha, it just follows the rules, that is, without attachments. Personal relationship policy with one's own pride. Personal relationship policy with someone else's pride. Personal relationship policy with one's own envy. Personal relationship policy with someone else's envy. Personal relationship policy with one's own will.
Personal relationship policy with someone else's will and its influence on us. And all of this we must build very finely, adjust it. Well, like a master, not like a layman, an amateur who doesn't know what to do with it.
We must tune all of this, like a master of a stringed instrument tunes the strings, so that from all of this there is a beautiful, wonderful harmony, some kind of beautiful symphonic music, pleasing both us and others, not bringing anyone problems or suffering, and contributing to enlightenment, liberation. And such a tuning of all this can only be done if we apply this seal of the view, all is Brahman, the seal of contemplation, all is Brahman. And then from this, ethics, relationships, samaya, the balance of energies, the boundaries of energies are regulated. A sadhu builds all of this within himself very finely and professionally. He treats his instrument of body, speech, and mind with greater attentiveness than a master treats his violin or stringed instrument.
Everything pure and impure is Brahmin. Brahmin alone is the cause of everything. Only Brahmins are all actions in the world. Everything is only Brahmin and only Brahmin.
If you have mastered this, then at the moment when anger manifests, you are able to say, and all of this is Brahman. And not just say it, but contemplate it. And not just contemplate it, but enter the state. Then you and the anger remain, but you represent the side of Brahman, and the anger represents the side of chaos, darkness, the energies of hell. This is a cosmic, epic battle and encounter. The light sides, representing Brahman, meet with the sides of darkness, chaos, and the abyss. If you can clearly envision the realm of hell by applying the seal, all is Brahman, then the power of anger surrenders, is conquered, because it is indeed not separate from the side of Brahman. Or when you experience attachment, you look again and you are able to say, so this is all Brahman, it is all unreal.
You know, when there are some documents and they put a stamp on them, invalid, expired. So the document is no longer authorized. It's not accepted anywhere. Likewise, if there is attachment, but you put a seal on it, it is Brahman, so it becomes invalid, and attachment no longer affects you. Or there is some other clouding, klesha, and you take the side of the Brahman view, and you kind of devalue this klesha in itself. And then you see it from a completely different angle, that it's not a scary klesha or a representative of darkness, but it's a part of Brahman, a play of his energy, but with its own density that must be respected. But you stop giving it your soul, you stop being subject to it.
It loses its enchanting or frightening power over you.
And you gain power over it, because you have applied the seal of view and contemplation.
Power over anything belongs to the one who applies the seal of view and contemplation. Whoever forgets to apply this seal becomes subject to it themselves.
And all these energies, these are the matakas,
those goddesses of the chakras, goddesses of the kleshas that we examined. When you apply the seals of view and contemplation, these goddesses manifest as beautiful, pure, various wisdoms that are inseparable from Brahman. If the seal is not applied, then you fall under their power. A yogi is one who knows how to skillfully apply these magical seals of view and contemplation.
Brahmin alone is self-sufficiency. Brahmin alone is the humility of the world. Brahmin alone is the silence of nature. Everything is Brahmin and only Brahmin. Brahmin alone is the message of the Vedas. Brahmin alone is the goal of meditations. Brahmin alone is the pinnacle of all yoga. Everything is only Brahmin and only Brahmin. Brahmin appears as a multitude of forms because of limiting beliefs. But recognizing that conditioning is false, you see that the multitude does not exist.
We must learn to love Brahman. To love Brahman, to love God, to love Shiva, it's the same thing. To love, we must think about him a lot. We must understand him well, because it's hard to love someone you've never seen and whom you don't understand. We must truly admire him. We must truly realign the vector of our consciousness so that love for Brahman overpowers love for names and forms. We have a love for the relative, a very strong one. This love for samsara, it is the reason for our rebirth here. We were reborn here because our attention really wanted a body. Our attention wanted bodily experiences, experiences of name and form. And we really love names and forms. It makes us feel alive, awakening some creative energies. Because we love names and forms so much, we are unreceptive to the reality of Brahman.
But here it must be different. One must love Brahman more than names and forms, more than the body, more than this world, more than relationships, more than other people, more than feelings, more than anything else. Just more. For example, I love the body 30%, but I love Brahman 50%.
I love names and forms 40%, but I love Brahman 70%. So that the love for Brahman dominates. And then I strive to think of him and always shift the focus of attention to Brahman. We love names and forms very much, but this is also our curse.
Because these very same names and forms capture us easily, as if using our love for them, and lead us in their own direction. We love the body, and even more than the body, we love the mind. We love the mind very much, and the mind captures us and leads us along the path of Manastattva.
The body leads along the path of the tattvas of the 5 gross elements. And so, love for Brahman is love for Shiva Tattva, Paramashiva Tattva, at least for the 5 pure tattvas, where there is non-duality and the perception of Brahman. And we must love him so that a passion burns within us to seek this Brahman all the time, just as a person searches for their beloved, having lost them at a station or a market, searching until they find them. So we must passionately seek Brahman all the time, love him and seek him, love him and seek him again. And when we find him, hold on to him so as not to let go. Like a rich man loves gold and is always looking for where to find more gold. When he gets it, he trembles over it so as not to lose it, so it isn't stolen, to preserve it, to lock it away safely somewhere so that it remains. So too must a yogi gain the experience of Brahman, and then be very careful that this experience of Brahman is not stolen from him. But there is no one to steal it. Nothing external can steal it unless he steals it from himself, unless his mind steals it. And Brahmavishara is the love for Brahman and the constant search for Brahman. So, the normal state of a sadhu is living in the dimension of Brahmavishara. Whatever sankalpas there are, whatever mantras are recited or bhajans sung, it's all one. A bhajan is a form of love for Brahman. When we sing a bhajan, we must sing with sincere prayer and love because we're making an offering to Brahman through it, and we're addressing Brahman to maintain that connection.
When we bow to a deity,
the deity is a pure manifestation, an expression of Brahman's energy, uniting emptiness, non-dual consciousness, and form. And we should try to understand how, in the deity, in the form of Brahman, Brahman himself is manifested. Why is the deity a pure manifestation of Brahman? Guru Yoga is the same thing. It is understanding why the Guru is Brahman. One's own meditation is understanding why I am Brahman.
And when we have such a clear vector of focus on Brahman, we won't need to over-reflect or let thoughts circle around in meditation or contemplation.
We will go straight toward our goal. We will quickly pass through the realm of lower states of our psychosphere, the chitta. We will immediately reach the right point.
And this kind of love for Brahman is the foundation of Jnana Yoga.
Methods, meditations, and techniques are only tools. But this kind of love is the core.
Brahman alone shines as the world, as well as the people inhabiting it. Brahman alone shines as forms, but none of them truly exist. Brahman alone is all the forms of the gods. Brahman alone is the sages and saints. Brahman alone is all meditations. All is Brahman and only Brahman.
All forms of gods are Brahman. All sages and saints are Brahman. That is, the gods do not shine with their own brilliance. Their brilliance comes from Brahman. Saints do not shine with personal, individual holiness. Their holiness comes from Brahman. If we recognize this, then we understand they are all Brahman. And this recognition of Brahman everywhere, in every deity, in every saint, and in everything, should lead us to understand the radiance of Brahman in every object. The ubiquitous, total, absolute, and complete radiance of Brahman. And when we learn to perceive this radiance, it's a very important foundation, a step toward correct contemplation. Because thereafter, contemplation is nothing other than holding one's attention on the perception of this radiance of Brahman.
Brahman is worldly and supreme knowledge. Brahman alone is the Supreme Lord. Only Brahman is the awakened nature. All is but Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman alone is the peak of bliss. Brahman alone is the omnipresent light. Only Brahman is the highest value. All is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman alone is the essence of all offerings. Brahman alone is the process of offering. Only Brahman is the nature of all beings. All is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman alone is all these spaces. Brahman alone is student and teacher. Only Brahman is all achievements. All is Brahman and only Brahman. Brahman alone is all the world's mantras. Only Brahman is their repetition. Brahman alone is all other actions. All is Brahman and only Brahman. Only Brahman is the silence of stillness. Brahman alone is the heart of hearts. Brahman alone is true wholeness. All is Brahman and only Brahman. Only Brahman is that which is imperishable. Brahman alone is all destruction. Only Brahman is equal to Brahman. All is but Brahman and only Brahman.
Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Ganga Japtatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara Ganga Japtatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Ganga Jatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara 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 Shiva Shiva Shambho Shankara Hara 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 Mahadeva 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 Ganga Jatara Gauri Manohara Partipuri Parameshwara